Hello, I'm going to provide the forestry sector economic update for 2016. I want to thank the contributing authors to start, Kentucky Division of Forestry, U.S. Forest Service, as well as the Kentucky Forest Industries Association. I just want to say we can't do this kind of work without those folks providing data and helping us with it, so they're very valuable in this process. For 2016, we're reporting a total economic impact in the forestry sector of $13.9 billion. So that is actually down 4.8% from what it was in 2015, which was a high for us since we've been doing this of $14.6 billion. You can see there the direct as well is down about $500 million. In 2016 it was 8.6, and in 2015 we reported 9.1. All that loss occurred in the pulp and paper subsector. So if you look at the green section of the pipe there, in 2016 we're reporting $619 million. And now for 2015, or in 2015, we reported over $1 billion. So that whole loss occurred in that one subsector. This is a map here of Kentucky that shows locations of all of our wood producing facilities here in Kentucky. And you can see that we have several clustered, or areas that are clustered, like around Louisville, in Somerset, London, and even in the Bowling Green area. Basically the area between the two interstates is where they're all kind of clustered up. Now, with that said, we still have coverage across the state, so you see many of these dots in a lot of rural areas here in Kentucky, and that's important to us economically, particularly to our really rural communities here in the state. We have 722 of these facilities in Kentucky. That's 9 up from what we reported in 2015, and we have facilities now in 110 over 120 counties. We also have 2,761 Kentucky master loggers here in the state. The shade of green in each individual county represents how many loggers are in those counties, so you can get a quick idea of where they are located. When you combine those with the facilities that we have in the state, there's not a state, not a county or a corner of the state that there's not a forestry activity occurring. This chart here shows hardwood sawlog production here in the state. You can see where we was at in 1999 and then where we're at here in 2016. We've had it's been somewhat flat for the last 3 years or so. We're estimating that we'll end the year at about 750 million in production. I want to point out, if you'll notice, the 2009, notice that decrease in production, and that reflects very closely with housing starts. So if you look at this chart here, we can see where it fell off in 2009, which mimics what happened in our hardwood sawlog production. So basically, as the housing starts go, so does the forestry sector. Many of our products that we manufacture, hardwood flooring, cabinetry, millwork and molding, those kind of things all go into new housing starts. So without housing starts, our sector suffers somewhat. Now this chart here shows delivered log prices to the mill. So we're looking at ash, white oak, walnut, red oak, and yellow poplar here. You can see in 2016 that the prices have really fell off for most of these species. Well, actually all of them except for white oak. So white oak continues to do well and grow in price and demand, and that's really related to the cooperage industry needing the white oak for barrel staves, barrel production. I mentioned that all that loss that we've occurred happened in the paper and pulpwood subsector, and that was all due to a Verso plant, a paper plant closing in Wickliffe, Kentucky, in far western part of the state. The loss of that plant represents about 1.2 million tons annually of pulpwood that went into that plant. Also a loss of $430 million in direct economic impact. And it also has impacted about 100 or so loggers, so that's a big deal. And has reduced revenues to landowners $40 to $60 per acre. So, all these things are kind of negative, but one thing that can be overlooked is the woodland owner's ability to manage their timberlands. Without a market for that pulpwood, it's just going to continue to stand in the forest when the loggers go in to harvest it. There's not going to be an economic incentive for landowners in that area now to potentially remove those trees, which means something else of lower value, or something else of higher value could be growing there if they were harvested. We'll look a second here at tie logs. This chart here illustrates or shows the price for tie logs. You can see, and the blue line there represents non-oak hardwoods that's used for tie production. You can see the prices really fell off since 2014. The good news here is oak is up, but the volume of the oak is not offsetting what we're losing in the value of the non-oak. So it really makes the market pretty sluggish right now. So, you know, we're forecasting the tile market to continue that into 2017, continue to be sluggish. The shrinking coal markets and other rail-dependent commodities are shrinking. Railway usage is just not as much freight being moved on the rails like there was. Partly probably due to diesel fuel being so cheap these days. And it's really dampened the markets for railroad repairs and cross-tie purchases. There's also been a reduction in exports going into Canada as well, which has negatively impacted it. We still feel like Kentucky remains very well positioned. We really haven't lost capacity. We can produce a lot of ties, it just needed demand to do it. And then it seems like the higher quality logs is going to kind of hold their own as well in terms of tile logs. So that's sort of positive too, I guess. Looking at stave logs, again, you know, I mentioned the barrel production being so high. You know, the distillery industry is really driving that. Bourbon demand continues to increase. So if we look at this chart right here, it shows where we was at in terms of stave logs in 2008. It was about $750 at 1,000, and now here we're going to end in 2016. It's over. Looks like a little over $1,200 a 1,000. So it hadn't quite doubled, but it's significantly increased. So that's a good sign, at least for our white oak stave logs. So looking at the forecast into 2017 for staves, we forecast the demand and price for stave logs will continue on this trend, upward trend into 2017. We don't see any reason, especially after hearing all this great news today, why bourbon consumption is going to go down. So we think that's going to continue to increase. And for example, American Stave Company, a supplier to Jim Beam and Maker's Mark, is opening a new stave mill in Benton in 2017 or 2018. And this comes after they just had opened one recently in the Moorhead area. So this chart here shows wood products exports out of Kentucky. And you can see we're reporting it down as well. So we're reporting exports out of Kentucky down about 7.5%. White oak barrels continue to be the biggest export that we have out of the state. Once you use a bourbon barrel to make bourbon, you can't use it to make bourbon again, so you have to start with a new barrel. So most of those barrels are actually used. Most of them shipped into Europe. And then far behind the barrels is lumber. Most of that you see there is red oak lumber going into Asia. So in summary, we think the overall timber markets for demand and prices will continue to be flat. We don't really see a reason why that's going to change. There's no indicators that are telling us that it will. And white oak demand will continue to trend upward, you know, again, because of the bourbon production. Lumber overall, we think will remain stagnant through 2017. Again, that's really related to housing starts. So if we've seen housing starts pick up, we get a little more optimistic here. And then the logging industry will continue to remain fragile. So as the price for logs remains stagnant and operating costs for the loggers and costs for purchasing equipment goes up, it's really squeezing the loggers. So we're really concerned about that moving forward. So with that, I'll close.
All right, thank you very much.